Here's a 10-inch adjustable crescent wrench. Down in the comments, you guess how much I paid for that. I'll give you a hint. It's a little bit less than a six-pack here in British Columbia, which is why I'm doing the Thought with Scott. The term British Columbia has now been deemed offensive. Not allowed. Why is that? I couldn't tell you. That's why it's on my mind. If you're somebody like CP the Tool Addict that's watching, you might want to look away. We're not highbrow. Work Pro pliers, I couldn't help myself. 14 bucks. It'll cut something at least one time. The provincial government of British Columbia is run by the NDP party. I'm not going to explain all that to you. If you're unfamiliar, just maybe do a brief read. They like to spend a couple bucks on a few things that everyone might not agree with, but since when does anybody agree on everything? But I think one thing we all can agree on is, hardworking folks, men like me and you. It's important to be proud of where you're from, what your community stands for, who you're about. And I don't ever see that's a problem. I've never been taught that's a problem. It's always been a positive thing. You take pride in your surroundings. You leave things better than how you found them. And people find a sense of community within that. And it typically enriches people's lives. You know, that's why you got sports teams and you got clubs and, people get behind these things. And right down to, some people are feverishly, I identify as one political party or the other. I don't quite get that one, but the sake of the term British Columbian is what we're talking about. The provincial NDP government, towards the end of January, they came out with what they call a writing guide. My understanding is that the writing guide is a guideline for how the government presents information to the public and internally to themselves, and just overall a writing guide, just like how it sounds. So if we were going to, write the description on the back of these Work Pro $14.95 7-pack of pliers, there'd be a guide of how that should look and how it should be laid out. For those of you that hold some sort of corporate job or in a bigger company, or you do the old typey type behind a computer, your company probably has guidelines. This is what our email signature looks like. These are words we don't use. Well, the government's got this, and their favorite topic seems to be words we don't use. It was a big hubbub when this all first came out because, of course, they went after words like words saying he or him or she or they or mom or dad or father or son. They went through that whole laundry list. If you want to see the article, it's got a little bit more detail, and I think it references you to the actual documents. I watched it on Clyde Do Something's YouTube channel this morning while I was trying to enjoy my coffee. Thanks, Clyde. I tried to enjoy it. It got me all worked up. Now the term British Columbian is under attack because it's not inclusive. Well, here, I'm going to tell you what I think about this. The term British Columbian, to me, let's just start real logical, heaven forbid. I think that's almost illegal too, isn't it? Logic. These wrenches, metric wrenches, the dreaded, hateful metric system, were $9. That's less than $1 a wrench for an 11-piece set. Judge me if you will. I couldn't help it. If we go brass tacks logic, when you say British Columbian, that to me just conveys general information to an outside party. Say you're on vacation and you meet up with a group of folks and somebody goes, "Oh, I'm from Texas. I'm a Texan. I'm from Alberta. I'm an Albertan." Every geographical location where people have residence, they have some sort of term. And it's not always a play on words like British Columbian, you just adding that piece on the end. Sometimes it's unrelated or it doesn't really match the name, but they have a term for themselves that would identify, I'm from this area and this is kind of what we call ourselves. It's not like it's not a religion. It's not a derogatory or a demeaning term. It's logically the shape. If you look up a map, the shape of British Columbia is shaped a bit like a boot, like a cowboy, a bulky cowboy boot, if you will. We go down the sides pretty straight. We share the old Alberta border, and on the other side, where we keep the ocean there, and then it goes down to a tip at the bottom, shaped like a boot. That's a map. It's a map. Undisputable. Everything on this entire earth is drawn on a map. Borders, right down to your own piece of property. They give you a little map. All right there, sir, you're lucky enough to own this little shoebox chunk of land, and that's how we determine how much tax you pay. British Columbia has that too. It's a shape with lines. You can look it up on a map. If you drive to the edge of it, you'll get to a sign that says border, a new province start. If you go to the south, or if you go to the north, well, especially if you go to the south, bang, there's a man standing there with a pistol and a uniform that'll ask you for your passport, and he'll ask you why the heck you're trying to get into the United States and what you're doing and why you're going there. It's a border. That isn't because of the color of your skin or what you identify as or your religious beliefs. Just happened to be. Back in the day, that's where somebody surveyed her, and that's how it is. I don't have any control over that. So if we go just logic, people within the confines of these borders, British Columbians, because you live inside that box, that's where you're at. And if you go down to city, I say, if you're unfortunate enough to live down in Vancouver, maybe you like the hustle and bustle. I like a little free space and clean air. Don't tell too many people that, though. Up north here, it's terrible. You wouldn't like it. Lots of mosquitoes. A moose will bite you. You'd say Vancouverite, I think I've heard the term, right? Yeah, so it's not like, what has that got to do with anyone being offended? It's just a logical, you put a pin in a map. Oh, okay. What would we call folks from this area? We don't. If you're just standing in a room with a bunch of people that have never heard of this place at all, and they go, well, dang, for the sake of conversation, we have to reference this as something. We'll call them British Columbians because it's British Columbia. So they write this writing guide, and they say, well, we shouldn't reference anyone as British Columbians. And it actually goes as far to say you shouldn't reference yourself as British Columbians, because that would just make you a horrible person, I guess. You should say, I am a people that lives within British Columbia. Well, I hate to break it to you there, Professor. If this was running in an English class, that's the same thing. They're literally the same thing. You're just saying it in a different context. So they heavily reference Native groups, minority groups, maybe people of different religious faiths that wouldn't necessarily identify. Man, even that word torques me up. Can we just talk normal? Like, a lot of this stuff I don't remember being a thing, but now it's a thing. But they don't say they're British Columbians. Great. Okay. I cannot remember the last time I referenced myself as a British Columbian. Or have I said it enough times so it sounds kind of weird to you? So we covered the logic. If you put something in a space, you're going to reference it as if it is in that space. I am in the confines of the border of British Columbia, British Columbia. It hasn't got nothing to do with anything else. If I said that to you over the phone, you wouldn't guess what color my skin is or what church I go to, because it doesn't make no sense. British Columbia. All right, he lives in British Columbia. Anyways, we'll move off of that subject. Did I buy anything else? Not really. I kept the budget pretty light. Gotta get carried away. You don't want to spend the whole paycheck on $9 tools. Let's move on to the fact that we're kind of being pushed in a direction where you're being told you're not supposed to be proud of where you're from. That doesn't go for everybody, but it seems to be the push here in Canada lately, where I've actually heard people and it breaks my heart a little bit. People go as far, like in this news story, I read some of the comments below the YouTube video on Clyde Do Something's channel there, and there was a couple folks that said, well, I'm proud to say I'm British Columbian, but I'm ashamed to say I'm a Canadian. Folks, you guys watching this, what the people in power and our government does not dictate what you are as a person. I was always raised to be proud of where I'm from, proud of the people, and try to make it better. Everywhere you go, you should just try and leave things a little bit better than they were. The slogan for British Columbia is beautiful British Columbia. I'm telling you, if you've never been here, and if you're watching this from one of these big city centers, I'm not encouraging you to come. Hold your horses, eh? We don't need 57 million tourists clunking about, but it's good for the economy, they say. It is absolutely breathtaking. It's breathtaking. You're going to see stuff. If you go over and watch Destination Adventure's channel on YouTube, he's a BC boy, a little bit closer to the center of the province there. Well, not really the center, somewhere a little further south. Anyways, gorgeous. You watch his videos and you will see why people would say, oh, beautiful British Columbia. It is breathtaking. The animals, the scenery, the resources, the industry that we have available to us here, if it was properly managed, is absolutely gorgeous. Why wouldn't you want to say you're part of that? So for those that don't, I say they're British Columbian, well, then what are we talking here? Because, I mean, we all live in the same province, and I think, hopefully, at the end of the day, you just want good things for your friends and your neighbors, and it doesn't always seem that way, but it is literally one of the most beautiful chunks of land on the face of the planet, and the people that are elected to preside over it currently are telling you, we don't want you saying the word British Columbia. It's heartbreaking. It's not good for morale. It breaks people down when you say stuff like that. There's nothing wrong with being proud of where you're from, right? Especially when it's such a nice place to live. I mean that in the surroundings, right? Everyone, well, you know, the tax and the this and that. I get it, but come on, folks. We can't solve every problem all at one time. So I'm going to keep telling people where I'm from. I got no problem telling people I'm a Canadian. If you've watched the channel for any amount of time, it's not like, you know, I think there's a maple leaf on this dang hat. That's fine. That's fine. I don't care what state you're from. Have you guys ever heard of California? Yeah, not great. Not a great look on the news every time it comes up. One of the most beautiful strips of real estate, again, in the entire world on the West Coast, right? Our friends to the south there, a little bit further down. Beaches, sunshine, sand. They got crazy economic problems. They got crazy social problems. We got that here too. It doesn't mean that you wouldn't go, yeah, well, it's a nice place. You're not going to argue that. Is the sunshine? Yeah, it's beautiful. Or are you a Californian? Well, yeah, you live inside that box. So I don't know if I'm making a point here, but logic should prevail. And I surely don't need a government document telling me what I can and can't say. I'd say by this point in the development of humankind, we've kind of went over the P's and Q's. We're aware that there's certain things you shouldn't say. Some things are just downright rude. You shouldn't force people to do stuff. But if you're telling me I got to give up terms like British Columbian, well, what's next? Well, you can't say you're Canadian. Well, I live in Canada. Well, you can't say it. You just start to break down that sense of community. And sense of community starts in your own neighborhood, and then it should expand outwards. And, we're kind of all rowing the same boat. So don't tell me what I can and can't say. And I can't think of any reason why you wouldn't want to tell people that you live in one of the most beautiful places in the world. Now, I will say, and I'm not ignorant to the fact that I didn't name the province, okay? And the folks that did name it aren't alive anymore. But what I'm really fixated on is you can't be telling people not to be proud of where they're from. Because if you take a sense of pride out of a community, then I think the community starts to go downhill. And I don't think you got to look too far. It happens in my own town that I live in. Anywhere that people feel abandoned or not taken care of, or that folks are taken advantage of or pushed, they start to lose interest in their surroundings, and things start to fall apart. I mean, it's you don't have to look at a province within a country or a state within a country any different than you'd look at that one rundown house on the street. You know, they go, man, they used to upkeep that so good, eh? Man, that was good. They cut the grass. They made sure that the siding was painted and just top shelf, eh? That was gorgeous. Time goes by, maybe the house changes hands a few times, the neighborhood changes a little bit, and then the next thing you know, the whole thing starts getting run down. People lose morale. Well, if he's not going to cut his grass, I'm not going to cut my grass. And then what's left? Crap. Just the whole thing goes downhill. And that's what worries me when you start telling people, well, you can't be saying the term British Columbian because it's not inclusive. Okay. Do we all need to include each other in everything? I mean, you see kids at recess. You don't, if you got a couple thousand kids in a school, not all a couple thousand kids play with each other at recess. You know, they got groups, they play, they get along, they're respectful to each other. I think we've gotten carried away. You don't need a writing guide to explain to me that it's about the same logic as applied to a grade school playground. You get along. Nobody's worried whether your name is Tim or John or Jane or Dick or Harry. They just get along. They don't. We should just apply that same thing. I'm way off the rails here, but come on. Sense of community, sense of pride in your surroundings, and that goes a long ways. Ain't no question about that. So, what we can really appreciate here is buying cheap tools makes you feel good. And when they break 6 months from now, well, I probably won't even remember that they were cheap. Water off the back, eh? Water off a duck's back. Easy come, easy go. If you guessed in the comments, this 10-inch adjustable wrench was $7. Catch you on the next video.